In this video, we're going to cover the form components and the forms and tables UI system. So we have a number of components here. We have the input, we have the text area, we have sliders, selection groups, the upload file, switch, checkbox, radio, increments for the input, and we have toggles, and lastly we have the date picker calendar. So let's look at some of the variants within the properties panel. So the input, let me just drag this here. You can also get this by going to assets and finding the forms, clicking in and dragging out an input. Okay, so we have the placeholder, can change that to input. We have the icon left, we have icon right, add-on, left and right, the help text, and then increments. And then of course you can customize the various nested components when they're turned on. We have the default state, we have the hover state, and I recommend customizing this to fit the UI that you want to build. We have the focus state, but this should give you a great baseline. Here's the error state. You can toggle on and off the error message. And then we have lastly the disabled state. Okay, so let's turn this into a selector with the dropdown. So this can be done by getting rid of the icon. We'll leave the input and we'll add the icon right, which defaults to the dropdown. So this already looks like a selector, and we can change the text to say select. And then what we're going to do is go to the dropdown. So that's a different component, and we'll just drag that in. And all of a sudden you have a drop down. In this case, it's already being shown. So what we can do is make this active, and we can change this from chevron down to chevron up. And then you can further customize this. You can add a border, you can add a drop shadow, whatever you want to do to fit your UI. Okay, so now another thing we can do with this is we can turn it into a search. So a lot of other UI systems, they'll have a drop-down selector as a component, they'll have a search as a component, they'll have the input like you see here as a component, but I like to just do things all just from this input, and it shows kind of the power of this. So let's get rid of this icon, let's add an icon left, and let's change this to a magnifying glass. Let's bring back the placeholder, get rid of the input, and we'll change this to say search. And then we'll get rid of the label. We'll make this default. And then we're gonna go and we can just customize this further. Let's get rid of this border and let's change this to off-white. And let's round out the border radius here. And now this is what it would look like on a white background. Okay, so now you could see we have the basic search. You could go ahead and even add a subtle drop shadow to it if you want. You can really customize however you see fit. So that is the input. Text area is very similar, so I won't get into it. We have the slider. So the slider, we'll drag this out. We have the different increments here, 0 to 50, 25 to 50. We can get rid of the label. Then we have the selection group, and the selection group is basically these primitives, the switch, checkbox, and radio, with different labels. So let's just drag one of these on here. We have the instance. So this is large, we have medium, we have small. We can have the radio, we could have the toggle, and then we can make the style this with this white background. So you can imagine how this would look like if you had a number of different options. You could wrap that in an auto layout. You could do horizontal, vertical, whatever makes sense for your UI. Change these all to the checkbox. You can go in and customize the text. And you can also get rid of the description. So that is the selection group. We have upload file. This is very simple here. You can customize this text. And then we have the various sizes, medium, large. And then we have the toggle group. Again, I like to start from the most elemental level. So let's just drag one of these on. So let's create a like a date selector where the user can select to show days, months, years, or a custom date range. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get rid of this icon, and we'll just make 2 more. And this first one will be days, and then we'll do months, and then years. And we'll wrap this in an auto layout and get rid of the spacing. And let's say it defaults to months. So we can go here. And so these are all actually the hover state. Let's change those to unselected. And let's select this first one and make it selected. So that's what it would look like. Let's just throw this in a frame so it has the white background. Okay, so that's looking good. But now what if the user wants to select a custom date range? So this is where I would grab the input and the drop down. So here's the drop down. Let's just drag this in here. And now let's go to our forms and drag in a input. Okay, and so these are all the building blocks that we need. So in this case, the user is going to make a selection. So we can get rid of the label, we can get rid of the placeholder, add the input, and then add the left icon. It's already defaulting to the calendar icon, so that looks good. We'll just type in our date range. Let's say Jan 12th through the 25th. And now we have our drop down. We can customize this. Let's give it a medium drop shadow. That looks good. You could put a border around it. So actually we didn't need the drop down. We needed the date selector. So let's just grab one of those. Let's do extra small and drop it right in there. And let's change this from a single date to a date range. So here in the properties panel, we can do the date range, and it's March 24th, 1 through 6. So we can go ahead and update that to reflect this, or we can make the change here. We have the option of adding buttons to apply or to clear. We can get rid of the different buttons. Now let's look at the date picker in a bit more detail. So we have the single date. We have the ability to toggle between date and time. This is what the time would look like, hours, minutes, and seconds. We have the date range, and then we have months and years to choose from. In the next video, we are going to go ahead and cover the next most powerful components, which is the table components.